Good evening. My name is Len Foy, and I would like to introduce myself. I am a real estate attorney in Nashua, New Hampshire. I have been practicing law for just about 20 years, and in all that time I have been working with real estate clients on commercial and residential real estate transactions. Those of you who have been following me on YouTube and elsewhere know that we have produced and that we are broadcasting a series of videos in which I am discussing my office and the services that we offer, my experience, the manner in which I represent clients, and what to expect certainly in our real estate marketplace if you are working with my office, or just what to expect in general. Tonight, one of the things that I've been trying to do as of late, some of the earlier videos that we made were quite lengthy, but I think very informative. And they're still informative. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make these videos a bit more concise, certainly packed with information, but brief enough so that people can watch them in their spare time and not have to commit a half an hour or an hour to sitting through a video presentation. We have covered, I think, almost every subject exhaustively, really. But what I wanted to discuss this evening was purchase and sales agreements. What are they? How can my office help you with them? What is their relevancy to real estate transactions? How do we work with them? How do we make them work for us? And I'm hoping that we can cover that subject in 5 minutes or so, is somewhere in that approximate duration. So, initially, as a preliminary matter, I would like to introduce myself. Again, my name is Len Foy, and I am a real estate attorney located in Nashua, New Hampshire. I have been practicing law for just about 20 years, and in all that time, I have been representing real estate clients with respect to real estate matters, commercial and residential real estate transactions, and the like. Purchase and sales agreements, of course, are highly relevant to real estate transactions insofar as you really can't buy or sell real estate without one. So in terms of covering purchase and sales agreements, that would be our point of beginning. The fact that it is essential to any and every real estate transaction that we have a purchase and sales agreement. A purchase and sales agreement, it just boiled down to its most simplest parts, is a legal document, and it does need to be in the form of a document, which basically reflects a buyer and a seller and a property and a price and some other information and details about the transaction, contingencies as they're called, and other matters. Let's put it that way. A purchase and sales agreement does need to be in writing, so I would say as a threshold matter, verbal contracts to sell real estate are never going to be successful. There are probably instances where a person could go into court and, as we say, prove up the terms and conditions of a real estate transaction that perhaps they don't have contractual evidence of, but they may have other so-called writings that can be sort of pieced together like the pieces of a puzzle to evidence that a contract did exist and that certain people agreed upon certain things. But by and large, if you are or feel you are the party to a verbal real estate transaction or a real estate contract, you must know, just to begin with, that that contract, as a famous, I believe it was a famous movie producer used to say, oral contracts aren't worth the paper they're printed on, or in some cases they aren't worth the paper that they aren't printed on. I believe that it was a Hollywood mogul who made that statement, the name of whom is escaping me at this time, but I'll supplement this in a future video. But it's true, oral contracts are not worth the paper they're printed on, or not printed on, as the case may be. And never has that been such the case as it is with respect to a real estate transaction. and for obvious reasons. Real estate transactions have have a gravity about them that necessitate that they be in written form, and that we don't have people marching into court in droves, in packs, trying to prove up the terms of a transaction through verbal statements, nods, winks, gestures, and the like. So it would make our system of conveying real estate completely unworkable if we didn't have this requirement that they be in writing. So they must be in writing. It needs to identify buyers and sellers, which seems obvious. I frequently see purchase and sales agreements that have that piece of it confused. So it does happen. The property is in somebody's name pursuant to what the registry tells us, and yet certain people are aware of the fact that this person is deceased. So even though they are identified in the purchase and sales agreement, technically the estate is the seller. So that's a common example. Two people will agree to be the buyers of real estate, but then due to credit or other considerations, one is perhaps pulled out and the other one is allowed to proceed, so that we may wind up with a purchase and sales agreement that needs to be revised or amended down the road. And that's something that we can talk about too. That can be done. And incidentally, I would never give away the ending while the plot is still unfolding, but I have to give away the ending of this video. And the ending, the surprise, or perhaps not such a surprise ending of this video, will be that you really should consider hiring an attorney to assist you with your purchase and sales agreement. I think it's critically important. In some cases, it's really almost mandatory, and mandatory is probably not the right word, because nothing is ever really mandatory other than the fact that the contract needs to be in writing. But in Massachusetts, certainly, you will find that there is an expectation that you will have an attorney, and even if you don't, the other side will. So you'll find yourself not only battling the other side, but battling their attorney. So I think in Massachusetts, it's really a must. In New Hampshire, perhaps not quite as important, because New Hampshire, it's a different landscape. There are different expectations. Attorneys are not commonly involved at the purchase and sales agreement stage. But even if you're not having an attorney negotiate the terms of a purchase and sales agreement, it's a document that should be reviewed by an attorney wherever you are buying, whether it's New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Alaska, Hawaii. I don't think it makes any difference. If you are buying real estate, even if you've made the decision not to hire an attorney to negotiate it on your behalf, which is perhaps more costly, it really ought to be reviewed by an attorney, which I think you'll find, if you shop around, can be quite inexpensive. A purchase and sales agreement must include a price, and it must include really, a deposit. Real estate transactions are typically not valid without a deposit. It can be a deposit. It can be a deposit that most of us would consider insignificant. It could be a $10 deposit. I think it can be a $1 deposit. I don't see that a lot, but it probably could be. In other words, courts and others will not scrutinize the amount of the deposit so much as was there a deposit or wasn't there. And I think that the consensus probably is that transactions require a deposit in some amount to make them valid. So there'll be mention of that. And then there will be contingencies. And again, I'm trying to make this video perhaps a little bit more concise than some of our prior videos, so I'm not going into quite the detail that I've gone into elsewhere. But contingencies, suffice it to say, are things that need to happen for the transaction itself to happen. And I think the classic contingencies that come to mind would be your mortgage contingency and your home inspection contingency. So a home inspection contingency will likely be something to the general effect that if the property is not satisfactory to the home inspector or contractor or whomever is selected by the buyer to inspect the property, if the inspection generates results that are unsatisfactory to the buyer or to the buyer's agents, or to any of the buyer's surrogates, their home inspector, their contractor, then the buyer is given the right to withdraw from the transaction. And so too with a mortgage contingency, which basically says that if the buyer is not able to get financing, and again, the buyer needs to meet certain requirements in that context, but as a general proposition, if the buyer is not able to secure mortgage financing to buy the property, the buyer is excused from going forward and they're let out of the contract. And again, if the home inspection does not go well, or there are problems which are revealed by the home inspection, the buyer is excused from going forward with the transaction. So those are your contingencies. And then there's just miscellaneous provisions that typically come in at the tail end of the contract, like appliances that may be included with the sale or excluded from the sale. Home sale contingencies can be common when they're acceptable to all parties, which is that I'm only required to buy this property if I'm able to sell my property or another property. So those are your classic home sale contingencies, which are contingencies in one respect, but they're also what we would consider to be additional provisions or additional paragraphs to the purchase and sales agreement. In Massachusetts, as opposed to New Hampshire, there is quite a bit of attorney involvement, so that the buyer typically has an attorney and the seller has an attorney. And those attorneys each generate their own documents, referred to as an addendum or a rider. And those documents create additional rights and responsibilities on the part of the buyer and the seller, depending upon who the attorney is representing. So the buyer's attorney will create a rider or an addendum that creates additional responsibilities and obligations for the seller, and gives additional rights and privileges to the buyer, and vice versa. So that's why I think it's imperative that if you are buying real estate in Massachusetts, if you're a buyer, let's say, the seller will have an attorney, and that attorney will be looking out for their client's behalf. You should consider having an attorney to represent you and to look out for your behalf as the buyer. And that goes for sellers also. So purchase and sales agreements, frequently I'll be contacted by a party who informs me that they'd like to bring me in to review a purchase and sales agreement that they have already signed. So even though it makes perfect sense, and I think a lot of people watching this video probably would expect this, keep in mind that once you have signed a purchase and sales agreement, it's obviously very difficult to go back and then to renegotiate terms. So for anyone who is watching this video who hasn't yet signed a purchase and sales agreement, I would ask you, send me your purchase and sales agreement. We'll make some kind of a financial arrangement in terms of what it's going to cost for me to review it. In some cases, we will review purchase and sales agreements on a complimentary basis, and typically that's when we have a broader level of involvement on the transaction, and so reviewing the purchase and sales agreement is sort of part and parcel of what we're doing anyways. So in many cases, we can make our review of that document complimentary, and I would say call for details. I think that's probably the best way to leave it. If you have any questions about the circumstances under which I would be reviewing your purchase and sales agreement, whether I would be charging you and how much I would be charging you, consultations are always at no charge. So I would encourage people to contact my office and to seek a free consultation with me, and we can lay that purchase and sales agreement out on the proverbial table, and we can talk about the agreement itself, what changes I might propose be made to it, any cost involved or any costs that are going to be waived, and we can go from there. That is really a very basic and very rudimentary sort of walkthrough of the purchase and sales agreement, its different sort of constituent pieces, and attorney involvement, and specifically my involvement, and how I would be involved, and what I would charge, and there are circumstances that under which I wouldn't charge for my review of it. But again, most of my videos end on the same note, and it's a note of really imploring people to at least consider the possibility of hiring an attorney to review their documents and to represent them throughout the course of any real estate transaction they may find themselves a party to, whether they are buying or selling, whether it's their first transaction or their 10th transaction or their 20th transaction. Actually, it's interesting. You would think that as people sell more and more real estate or buy more and more real estate, they might be less inclined to hire an attorney, just because of having done so many of them, but I find that the opposite is true, and I think it's because people realize after they've been a party to several real estate transactions, the complexity of it, the potential for mishap, the potential for conflict, legal conflict, and other types of conflict. I think people realize the importance of having an attorney to represent them throughout that process. This has been such a serious video. I want to end on a note of levity and lightheartedness. Incidentally, we are at the beginning of a major storm that's coming through this area. So I'm delivering these remarks and creating and producing this video at the outset of it. The snow is just starting to swirl around, and apparently we're in for quite a bit of snowfall and some high winds, possible power outages. So this is life in New England. This is not for the faint of heart. But at any rate, my name is Len Foy. I am a real estate attorney in Nashua, New Hampshire. I would like to be your real estate attorney. I have been practicing law for just about 20 years, and in all that time, I have been handling residential and commercial real estate transactions for clients. I am admitted to practice law in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. I'm admitted to practice law in California, but I'm currently on inactive status. And I am licensed to issue title insurance and to handle real estate closings in the state of Rhode Island, although I like to point out to people that I am not admitted as an attorney there. My office, customer service, is near and dear to my heart, and it's part and parcel of the way we run this office. So it's imperative, it's an imperative in this office that we provide customer service and that we try to turn clients into lifelong and lifetime clients. And that is how I approach every client relationship and indeed every real estate transaction. Give my office a shot. Our phone number is 603-598-4030. My email address is lfoy@foylawoffice.com. You can find us on the World Wide Web. The web address is www.foylawoffice.com. You can send me a fax. Our fax number is 603-598-4020. Again, my name is Len Foy. I'm a real estate attorney in Nashua, New Hampshire. I have a great amount of passion for what I do. I love what I do. I love to come to work every day. To me, it isn't work at all. I enjoy being here. It's a family business. In many ways, I consider myself to be a self-made person, and obviously with the help of friends and family members, wonderful, wonderful employees and valued clients. Please give me a call. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We try to do a bunch of them, and I hope that people are enjoying what they're seeing and people are getting something out of them. Purchase and sales agreements are legal contracts. They create certain rights and obligations. They can create liability. They can be the basis for litigation and loss and damages. People who sign them should understand them. If you are faced with the prospect of signing a purchase and sales agreement and you have any questions about what you are signing or the obligations that you may be taking on, give my office a call. We'll go through it together. And I hope you do call. I look forward to hearing from you, and I thank you sincerely for sitting through this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. My name is Len Foy. Bye for now.